So welcome to our panelists, and I'd like to just turn it over to each of you, and we'll go from left to right, and if you could just share with the group kind of your journey on how you got to be where you are today, and then we'll continue with some probing questions about some of the challenges you may have experienced now that you've been out in operations for a while. So, Nicole?
My name is Nicole Hill. I'm prior military. I served 6 years active duty security forces. And when I got out of the military, my last duty station was here at Hill Air Force Base. And I got a job as a secretary in financial management in the building where I actually currently still work. And I did that for 4 years. And then I kind of accidentally stumbled across the Copper Cap career field, but my best friend was hired as the secretary for the contracting directorate, and I met Miss Andrews, who is our SES, and networked a little bit, and she found out that I had a degree, and I'm also a disabled veteran, so I was hired on through the Schedule A, and I've been in the program. This June will be 2 years, and it's been a great opportunity. I'm currently a 4-year intern. The Copper Cap program is a little different from the VA. Jesse's a 3-year, I'm a 4-year. And let's see here. I'll graduate with my MBA in May. They don't require masters, but it's highly encouraged that when you graduate, you do have a master's program. And it's also highly encouraged that you receive your level 2. I'm one class currently away from my level 2. Our rotations are a little different. I've had 3 rotations so far. My first rotation, I worked in DSP3, which is in engineering services. And then I worked in the small business office for 6 months. And then currently, I'm helping manage the interns right now.
Jesse?
Managing the interns is a big job. There's quite a few of us. And we're causing trouble everywhere. My name is Jesse Ball. I came into the Copper Cap program through the SCEP program, which is now the Pathways program. And that actually happened. I kind of fell into that through Weber State University. I was here working on my MBA and working at a job that I was going nowhere at in West Jordan and commuting an hour every day. Hated that. And the job announcement came through Weber State, through their resources here. And so I just applied for it. I had no idea what contracting was. Never thought about Hill Air Force Base and contracting. I thought like engineering, repairs, and actual hands-on maintenance type stuff. So I kind of showed up to the interview and had no idea what was going to happen. And many of you know Ms. Schmidt, Belinda Schmidt. She is the division chief over the interns, and she was one of the people who interviewed me. And I kind of had to ask her, "What am I interviewing for?" And so I was able to get into the SCEP program. Upon completing my master's degree here, I got into the Copper Cap program. I've been in for a little over a year and a half. As Nicole said, I'm on a 3-year program because I have my master's degree already, so I'm on a kind of shorter schedule. My first rotation was in missiles. I support the ICMS program. I was there for a little over a year, and then, or a little under a year. And then my next rotation, I was the executive officer for the director of contracting, so that was a very interesting rotation, and it was not something that I was looking forward to. But after speaking with our supervisor and kind of working out why they thought I'd be a good fit for it and how I could stand to benefit and things, I ended up feeling pretty okay about it. And by the time I was done with the rotation, it ended up being one of my favorite out of the 2. So. And I'm currently down in operational contracting, so we do base services. I'm working on like paving 90 IQs to get roads repaired and painting and asbestos removal and stuff like that.
Hi, my name is Bryn McGowan. I also sort of fell into contracting, having no idea what it was. I graduated from a small school in Maryland called Mount St. Mary's with a history and English degree in 2009, and I was fortunate enough the Career Center appointed me to Frederick, Maryland, where they just stood up the VA Acquisition Academy. I ended up getting that position and starting as an intern in my contracting career. I graduated in May 2012, and I was fortunate enough to do rotations throughout all of VA. I went to a VA hospital in the Bronx, New York. I was out in Chicago establishing big FSS schedules for pharmaceuticals that the VA has the authority to establish. And then I ended up in DC, where I'm in an operations office supporting our VA central office, and I actually have my level 1 warrant and I'm VACC level 2 certified, and I buy our secretary basically anything he needs.
A very high visibility position.
Yeah, it's very stressful.
I'm Apis Bath, and similar to Bryn, I also graduated from Mount St. Mary's in 2009. I got my undergrad degree as a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology. And then I realized towards the end of getting that degree, I realized, well, in psychology, you can't really do anything unless I go get my master's in something. So I was kind of toying around with the idea of going to law school, sat in on a couple of law classes, and I was like, this is kind of like too cutthroat for me. So I kind of was looking for anything. I moved back down to Georgia where my family was from, and kind of was emailing the Career Center like Bryn was saying, and they told me about the same program. Eventually, when on day 1 I saw Bryn, and I was like, hey. Anyway, so never knew anything that even the career field existed. Nobody in my family ever worked for the federal government besides my uncle, who was a major in the Marine Corps. But besides that, terrified. But you know, a couple months later, we're out on our first rotation, and you know, 3 years later, I graduated from the academy. My rotations were in Augusta, Georgia, at a hospital, VA, where I did medical service contracts. I also did a rotation in downtown DC for the National Cemetery Administration, where we did construction for the cemeteries, where they sent me over to San Diego to negotiate with the Navy over in Point Loma. They had a sewage line that burst near our cemetery, and we didn't want to, have any leakage over there. But also, I did a rotation in Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the hospital up there for medical construction. And then my last rotation and ultimately final placement was for a strategic sourcing office. So that was a brand new agency that was just stood up 2 years ago at this point. That's where I currently am now. I'm working on very large projects, things for the Secretary's office, and actually a project for BAAA, the Academy, as well as a large-scale enterprise-wide vehicle for services, office services.
Sebi Sarabia with the Warriors to Workforce program, and I mean, like everyone else, I didn't know anything about contracting. The only thing I did know is when I was deployed to Baghdad in 2003, I knew how poorly, or my first sergeant would always just like be cussing at everybody else because we were never getting like our water supply or food. So we literally lived on MREs for like 7 months and only like 2 bottles of water. And he would always say like, it's the contracting folks in the States, the Secretary planned this poorly. I mean, he would always curse out like the Secretary of Defense. And I was like, it was pretty bad. Like we never got any of the things we needed. I mean, it was some pretty dark days. And I mean, that's all I knew about it. And I was Army for 4 years. I mean, went from shooting 155 artillery shells to now wearing a suit, coming into the academy. And it's been a great opportunity, just how much the academy has helped me and my family, just be, someone better, to be better in life every single day, pretty much. And it's just crazy how it worked out. Like I got an email probably in like 2011, because I got hired in November 2011, October. Yeah, it was October. I got an email just from my chief that was in the military with me when I was in Germany. He was like, hey, here's an email, just apply for it. Whatever, it has a good track, 5 to 11. You're gonna work for the VA, support the mission, to help veterans. I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. When I had my interview with Dave Sella, I told him like I have no background. Like I don't even know what you're asking me about contracting because all I've done is like shoot artillery. That's all my background is the Army. I'm a real good janitor, because that's all we did aside from shooting was just cleaning. We cleaned and cleaned. And yeah, so he was like, you know, a week later I got a job offer, and I was like, dang, and I mean, I drove off to Maryland, and I remember driving up there, and Dave Sella texted me. He was like, make sure you have some, like, you know, some business attire, and I'm like, I just came in t-shirts and jeans, you know, like, I didn't even know what I was getting into. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna, you know, sacrifice this. I left my wife back home. I was like, you know what, like, I want to, you know, better myself. And I mean, it's amazing. You know, they put us through the first year of getting the 24 business credit hours. And when I showed up to the academy, there was an academic advisor that they also have that works with us. You know, if you want to do, you know, aside from, you know, NCMA commodities and services all day, every day with using NASA suit, the GSA schedule, those open market, but it's a lot of stuff right now that I'm in charge of is a lot of things under the simplified acquisition threshold. But you know, I see room for advancement, and I mean, I'm here to stay for a while, so very fortunate.
Thank you. And, you know, Sevi continued to make a sacrifice beyond the military by leaving his family in Austin while he made the commitment to come to Frederick, Maryland and live there for a year. He's since had his second child. And we're thrilled that we've been able to help him land a permanent placement back home so he can be back with his family. And he's just I know all 5 of our panelists have just done an amazing job. And Nicole, you too, with your service in the country. And so thank you both for your service and for all that you've done. So I'm going to kind of go off script here a little bit based on just a couple of things. It's interesting that our panelists, probably very similar to many of us in the room that are 1102s, I don't know how many of us as we were in high school or in our college career were really thinking about a career in acquisition. I know I certainly landed there by accident, and so, and many of you did as well. And so I'm just curious, as an acquisition community, what might we be able to do differently to, you know, educate our folks, our kids in high school or in colleges, to let them know about what a great profession this is in terms of serving our country, how lucrative of a career field it is, how job secure this job is. I think particularly in this economy, this is probably one of the best fields, as stressful as it can be, and we're going to talk about how to manage the stress in a few minutes. But I'm just curious from our panelists, what might we be able to do differently to educate the public about what a great and important career field this is? So I'll open it up to any one of you that might want to chime in.
Maybe through NCMA. I was just thinking, I know in high school I remember, you wouldn't call them job fairs, but several agencies would come in and talk to us, and maybe NCMA would be a great resource, and we could go to the high schools and educate the high schoolers about our career field and acquisition.
Anybody else thoughts?
One thing is, I noticed this, kind of weird how I noticed this, but a couple of weeks ago on Jeopardy, they were going through, you know, the first segment. They say, what do you do outside of being on, you know, the show for 15 minutes, because either you're going to lose or everybody's going to forget you. But the one lady said, oh, I'm a contract specialist. He says, what the heck is that? He said, well, I write and negotiate contracts for the federal government. He goes, oh, I guess that sounds like a contract specialist is. And then he just moved on to the other person. But then I was researching, I was a famous contract specialist. And then if you look on Wikipedia, Wanda Sykes, a famous comedian, she worked for NSA as a contract specialist, and I never knew that. But there's a whole bunch of actually famous people that used to work as contract specialists, but you never see them in movies or anything like that. And so I wonder if that actually, but you see, you know, a whole bunch of, like, you know, A Few Good Men, and, you know, a whole bunch of high level people in movies and stuff like that, but never anything in the procurement side. You know, maybe, I mean, that might be one avenue, but I don't know if that's something that we can do on our level.
So I tell you, leave it to a liberal arts group to come up with something like that. Okay, for those of you that weren't in the earlier session, I was talking about how I think we've done a disservice across the federal government. I'm a business major, so I can say this. When DAWIA was implemented, part of the philosophy and the strategy there was to professionalize the job series, to elevate it from the perception that was just administrative or clerical. And so in order to make the business case to professionalize the series and get the higher grades and get the visibility and the elevation that the profession deserved, we had to say, need a business degree to be able to make that kind of shift. In doing so, I think we've missed a tremendous opportunity, and both Bryn and Adam are liberal arts majors. And I think we've missed a tremendous opportunity to bring that diversity of thought. And when Adam just shared that, I'm thinking, all right, we need to get Wanda Sykes a keynote presenter at one of these things. And yes, and even to liberal arts, who would have thought? Who would have thought, I'm going to go look at Wikipedia to know what famous people. So anyway, I think, I think on the civilian side of the house, we have the flexibility to recruit liberal arts majors, so long as they have the 24, or actually the bachelor's degree or the 24 semester hours of business credit. They cannot advance to the GS 13 level unless they have the 24 semester hours of business credit. So I'm sure those that came in, they're actively pursuing getting those 24 business credits so that they can advance. But I do think we've been fortunate in the civilian agencies to be able to recruit kind of that diversity into the workforce, and I think it really makes for some interesting conversations on how we go about doing our work. So thank you. I think it's worth looking into that. And Jesse, looks like you have
just to clarify, DOD, there are the Pathways program or the SCEP program, which I came through. My degree is in criminal justice. I did not have 24 credit hours of business coming into the Department of Defense. While I was in the SCEP program, I finished my MBA. And so there are ways to get into the DOD without that business credit.
So under the Pathways program now
Yes.
that you're able to do that? Okay, all right, that's good to know. I didn't realize that. Great, well, interesting ideas there. So, one of the things I know, from my years in operations and just from talking with colleagues and many of you about the stress of the job and the workload's pretty heavy. Can you guys talk and share a little bit about what your experience has been like in terms of juggling and managing a heavy workload, and how you go about also making sure that you have the right balance between home life and work?
Well, for me, I just recently started taking a lunch, which before with my workload and juggling it, I was just super intense about getting everything done, answering emails as soon as they come in. But for me, maintaining that work-life balance means taking a break and taking a second to go and do what you're entitled to, and keeping work within those boundaries is really important, and turning your BlackBerry off when you leave the office.
I think that's really important, and I'm a big proponent of you've got to take care of yourself, because you will, if you don't, you're going to burn yourself out. And I've been a big proponent of eating right, making sure you're getting your sleep, exercising. Although Joanne will attest, I probably don't get lunch very often either. I try, neither do you. And probably many of you. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And I know, and Nicole, anybody else want to comment about how do you manage it all?
It's tough. I'm a little more seasoned than some of our typical interns. I'm a little older. I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and in almost 2 years I've been in the program. I started and almost finished my MBA, and the DAU certifications, and learning the job, and the volunteering, and all of it is kind of overwhelming sometimes. But the great thing about our program is there's 50 of us, and we do a lot of wingman activities, and I think that's really important. And we're also allowed the opportunity to work out 3 hours a week. So I think that maintaining that mental and physical balance helps me.
Okay. So let's go to, so you've all can you talk a little bit about your programs in terms of what the sequencing is, in terms of the classroom education, on-the-job experiences, any other elements of your respective programs? And maybe we'll do, one of you will take Copper Cap and one of you take the regular intertrack, and then 7 you get WTW. So why don't we start with 7 and then we'll work our way down.
All right. Well, the WTW 3-year program pretty much, what helped us a lot in the first year, because coming in as a GS5, it's kind of hard to make a living in the DC area, was the boat rehab. Boat rehab, they paid for my relocation expenses from Texas to Maryland, and provided me with like a printer, laptop, you know, supplies to set up an office at home also. As well as, I think they were withdrawing from the post 9/11 GI Bill, a monthly stipend of like $1,600 a month that kind of compensates, since, you know, you'll be a GS-11 at the end of the program. But we'll try to give you that now, so, you know, you can make a living for yourself and just call it even. Like, you know, they just deducted it this past year to like $1,000. But I mean, it's an extra stipend on top of your salary, on top of your disability if you have one. And the last 2 years you go on TDY, so I mean, it's great. I mean, it's a great program. Like, you get to test out different offices in the country after you know your first year, and you can choose from construction, health, medical centers, or IT. And yeah, you just go on rotation 4 or 5 months, come back, report to the academy, which is your home base, get the training done, get all your concourses, skill building, and pretty much the skill building and leadership courses, they've helped us since my whole cohort is a bunch of service disabled vets. And we've, I mean, it feels like we're in the military again. Like, we just, I mean, the camaraderie, we're a great team. You know, I mean, it's just real together. You know, we still keep in touch, even though we're all spread out through the country right now. But it's a great program, and like the saying, every rotation is your interview. You know, if you really like it, you're pretty much selling yourself from the get-go that you want to be there and you don't want to be spinning your wheels. But I mean, that's pretty much it. And the first year also, what's helped with the stress was our psychologist we have on hand, Dr. Amy Baer. She that handles the Apex Performance, peak performance training. She's worked us pretty much, I mean, a lot of us have had a lot of loose connectors in our brain, and she's helped us just connect, you know, our brain together, just to get our breathing in sync with our heart, and just to remain cool, calm, and collected. Because I mean, we literally, a lot of us went from kicking the door down literally during deployments and raids to now like get into this mindset, well, yeah, you're going to do the same thing, but instead you're going to kick doors down of opportunity. You know, you want to remain cool, calm, collected, to open up doors of opportunity to, you know, be someone greater in life. So, I mean, it's an excellent program. I recommend it. Like, I don't know where I want to be in the academy. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about mission service? Talk about the mission service project.
Yeah, we had one. I mean, we just went to one in Loch Raven, Baltimore. I went out there and played bingo with a bunch of, you know, I mean, it was, I think, Vietnam vets. Was it Vietnam vets? Yeah, and I mean, it was like they were so happy to see us, and just, I mean, that's what we're here for. Like, that's, you know, to give, to serve, you know, our veterans. And it was just amazing at how, I mean, we were like not playing races with their wheelchairs, but I mean, they were like really excited to see us. And I know the Vietnam vet that I was with, his name was Randy, and he just kept telling me, like, I really want to win in bingo. And I want to win. And we ended up winning like 5 games, and he was like, I want you to take me back to my room, and like, let's chant like the champ is here. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's real touchy, because, well, you know, when you take him back to their room, he's like, you're all I have, you know, like, to make me smile. Like, it's like, I don't want you to leave. So I mean, it's awesome. And just, I mean, serving with the VA, knowing that we're serving, you know, all veterans across the country, I mean, it's amazing.
Thank you. So Adam or Bryn, who wants to take it? For your
Our program, the VA acquisition, the 2-year program is a little bit different than when Bryn and I went into it. Ours was an in-house program when we went into it, so meaning that we were full-time employees of the academy, and then we went to different locations in the United States, and then placed at an organization. How it works now is that there's a stakeholder that identifies a slot for a potential full-time employee to be filled, and they send that full-time employee to an initial block of training for about 3 months to the academy, and then they'll do their rotations back at that host site, and then after the end of the 2-year period of time, they will remain at that host site, continuously just doing their rotations at that host site. But again, they do the mission service that was just talked about. They do the skill building, and they do the leadership classes in addition to the traditional, the con courses, the contracting courses for their certification. At the end of that 2-year, they will be a GS 1102 Step 11, and they will have all the requirements to fill out their paperwork for certification level 2.
Copper cap insurance, what about your program?
Well, the Copper Cap program is a little more free form than the VA from what it seems. All of our training is on-the-job training. We don't do anything at an academy at EAU. We do on-the-job training, and we are responsible for getting our con classes taken on. That's our responsibility. We do it, the distance learning classes or going TUI. The management helps guide us through that, but there's no set training schedule. We have our intern training plans that we take with us to the different rotations to make sure we've been trained through the giant list of things that any acquisition professional is supposed to be able to do. The 4-year interns do, I believe it's up to 6 rotations. 3-year interns like myself, we do 2 buy-in rotations and 1 special or unique rotation. And then by the time you're done with the program, like Nicole said, you're not required to, but it's generally expected that you'll have a master's degree and that you'll be level 2 certified.
If you could, and going to all 3 programs again, if you could recommend changes or things that you would like to see done differently, what would it be?
I think one thing that I don't know if it's just the different, we had a change in leadership right as I came into the program, and they seem to be more focused on a class called Merco. I don't know. It's a 5-week class where you get everything you need for level 1 all up front. And a lot of the newer interns are doing that right up front. It seems more kind of structured and more along the lines of what the VA is doing, where they're getting their training up front before being thrown onto the job training. Whereas when I came in, right before that, it was just like, oh, you've got to take Con 90, you've got to take Con, all these Con classes, so get it done. And so I would like to see maybe a little more structure in the training side, the formal training.
Nicole, would you concur with that? Or?
I would. I think another thing is I feel bad for our COs. There's 50 of us. We come in, we come out. My first rotation was a year. You constantly have new interns, and those COs have to train those new interns from, the very beginning. And I think that has to get exhausting. I mean, some of them are, my first CO was amazing. I was really appreciated for what he did for me. It's just, I don't know, I can't imagine having to do that and balance your workload, and also, they're going for their masters and they're trying to accomplish their Con 290, so just a stress level on them, and I think it's tough.
I think you bring up a good point. So do we have any COs or managers that have had before interns?
Yeah, I did.
So from your perspective?
I was mentored, and then later in my career I mentored. I did want to say I'm a former CO and retired Fed. But it was so funny to hear each one of you say that you just kind of fell into it, because that's exactly what happened to me a gazillion years ago before you were even born. And it still works, though,
It does.
I mean, it still works. And liberal arts, too. Liberal arts background is good, I think, in this field. I've worked with a lot of folks that fell into it with a liberal arts background. But yeah, I did. I was mentored when I first came in. I was in it was an informal procurement intern program with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and it was a procurement trainee, GS5, whatever it was, and right out of college. And but I was fortunate enough to share an office with a guy that was about a GS11 at the time, and I learned so much from him and asked him a gazillion questions every day just to get through the day. But then later in my career, when I was a CO, we hired a young man right out of college, and he was in my branch, and I pretty much mentored him. And he was a smart kid and picked things up very, very quickly. But I always looked at it as, the quicker I trained him, the more productive he was going to be. So it was worth my time to do that. So I think these things keep recurring over and over.
Well, and I think it can be a tough sell. When we stood up the Acquisition Academy, the internship school in 2008, and we have offices nationwide. It was a tough sell because we had to convince the leadership in those organizations, you're going to have to give up your really good people to mentor these interns that are coming in. And so, you know, a few took a risk with us, and over time, we're now up to 115 different stakeholders across the U.S. So it is an investment for the future. But I think you bring up an important point, Nicole, that sensitivity and that understanding of knowing that the existing workforce has to kind of make that kind of commitment to you and that investment in you. And so maybe if some of you can offer up any, just how you approach that, your recognition that you're asking a lot of the folks in operations to, you know, add to their plate by helping grow you. And even, you know, I've even witnessed some sensitivity around, I'm not going to train you so that you can be more competitive to get my job downstream. And so, you know, we can't ignore that. That's a reality that exists out there. And I don't know if any of you kind of felt that ever, or if you have, how you've navigated or managed to nurture that relationship along. So any thoughts or comments from our panelists on that point?
I think one thing that was important that I learned from some other maybe more senior leaders is I have a CEO that I get along with really well, and I worked with him previously when I was in the SCEP program, and he would always joke when he'd see me, he'd say, "Hey, future boss," or he'd say, "Hey, boss, hey, future boss," and just little jokes like that. But my approach with him was always, I didn't want to feel like a drain on him. I wanted to feel like I was adding to the team. And so when I would approach him with questions, I'd always try to do my research first and then go and say, "Hey, this is the direction I'm thinking we need to go. Is that correct?" Instead of just saying, "Hey, Mike, tell me what to do with this. Hey, Mike, tell me what to do with this." So I think just being a little more proactive with that kind of stuff before, you know, trying to find solutions to problems and stuff before you take it to them will make them feel like maybe you're not a drain on their time or whatever, but that you're contributing to the team.
I think that's very wise. Do your homework first. So great. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
Another thing I just recently discovered that I'm going to attempt to do is that in the military, we have CDCs. So when you first come in the military, they give you a volume of CDCs, and I think they're a great tool. I just recently found out that we can do that as civilians. So I'm going to take that upon myself and get some CDCs because I think they're great. And I've heard very successful things from our military, contracting military. And I think that would also be a good resource because you're learning from that and then you're taking the information and then just being brand new, I guess, is what I'm talking about. Because when you're kind of brand new, and Jesse, the prior steps, I definitely think they have an advantage because they come in, they understand the terms, the technology, as far as contracting goes. And when you first come in, like you stated, going to Merco will really help you. I had no idea what I was doing when I first came in, and I didn't know what questions to ask, I guess, was where I was really, you know, I knew I wanted to be motivated, and I didn't want to bother my CEO, and I'm trying to find stuff in the car, but I didn't know what I was doing. So going to Merco definitely helped, and I think maybe CDCs or something along that level might give us a leg up on that.
What are CDCs?
Goodness, acronyms. Career development.
Okay.
Yes, career development courses, and I used them in the military, and I found them to be very beneficial.
Anybody else on the line?
I agree with Jesse. Whenever I identified the problem, rather than running over to whoever he needed to know, they needed to know what the problem was, but also I brought them potential solutions. I analyzed the solutions and I provided a recommendation, which I thought the most appropriate way would be to go. And then also, a backup plan too. I always thought that, if they didn't potentially agree with me, I always had a plan B just in case, and then, but that was also successful.
Have you let go of any ideas that weren't adopted as you made your case and you couldn't convince or influence? We try to build into our program, how do you influence without having authority?
For me, working as a contract specialist, my name doesn't go on the bottom of that paper. I mean, as a contracting officer, he's putting his reputation, ultimately his responsibility on the line or her. And so ultimately, fine. I mean, I'll change it. You know, I just wanted to make my, you know, opinion known based on what I know. But ultimately, it's your, you know, it's your document. So, I mean, that's just me. I know that there's, you know, some strong-minded people that I also work with that aren't, you know, that will have to be asked to remove themselves from the team because they can't work like that. But ultimately, I don't have that authority, and I recognize that. So,
That's great. So what
I
about?
always
yeah.
said, if I could interrupt, I always thought it was when I was mentoring folks like you, that if I didn't agree, and by the way, I agree exactly with what you guys both said, that's what I was taught. When there was an issue, you know, research it, bring a couple of options and make a recommendation. And if, as a CO, I didn't agree, I always felt it was my responsibility not to exercise my authority, but to tell you why I didn't think and why I thought this was a better approach. And normally, that was well accepted. That's a better way to do it.
So, you know, I'm going to continue asking questions, but if anybody has questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask the panelists. So invite your participation in this process as well. Yeah.
I have a question. It sounds like a lot of times you bounce from town to town, sometimes leave family. There might be potential where you're paying for 2 housing costs, right, for yourself and your family. How is that managed? Does the academy help with that at all?
Well, in the if
Yeah, I mean, my wife ended up moving like midway, her first year I was there, she moved up to Frederick, and she ended up, I mean, we got pregnant, and I pretty much said like, hey, I need to do a back-to-back rotation. I want to go to Austin. I made my case, and yeah, we just ended up moving to Austin. We left our apartment in Frederick and just moved to Austin with crossing my fingers that I was going to get there permanently. So, I mean, it was a little stressful, but she made it happen. They made it happen.
So, I mean, that is a reality that in some cases, particularly WW, they're maintaining 2 residences.
Requirements, I really want to focus on that technical expertise. And with the older generation getting ready to retire, definitely squeeze the knowledge out of some of those folks, because I don't want to lose that. I'm scared that the government is going to lose that. So that's my main focus for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
Well, I never planned on being a federal employee, and as I said, I didn't even know what the contracting career field was. But now that I'm in it, it's a challenging career field that I've enjoyed. And since if I'm going to be there when I complete the program, I plan on being a branch chief, division chief. I'm going to be the boss. So that's my plan.
Good for you.
I think my main career goal right now is just to take it day by day. I'd like to shift to policy. At some point, I do like the critical thinking and creative aspect and crafting language. So at this point, I'm just trying to keep my head above the bureaucratic fray in DC and survive that.
As far as educational things for me, I'm just working on finishing my master's. I got my level 3 certification, so I'm going to maintain that. And I just recently got a promotion, and so I'm going to just continue working with that, and maybe in a couple of years look for, after I got some more experience under my belt, maybe look for a supervisory kind of position. And then maybe even tread into, kind of a dual program and contracting kind of position. I like problem solving, and so I love working on the contracts and working with customers. Maybe even being a customer, working with contracts might appeal to me as well.
So for me, I mean, just completing my FACSI level 2 this year. I'm also graduating from the academy in November. And yeah, just keep learning every day. I mean, strive for excellence. Absorb all the knowledge from the older folks at the TAC. And yeah, one day take over, manage it, be that SES.
And you guys are giving me great hope and confidence that our government is going to be in good hands. And I tell you, it's music to my ears to hear that we've got some young folks that are aspiring to move into management positions. That's been one of my fears, is that our community has taken such a beating, and we've got, there's a lot broken with the system. And we constantly talk about the acquisition workforce and kind of infer that's where the problem is. I think we've got really smart, hardworking people that do a really good job most of the time. And unfortunately, the press picks up on the 1 or 2 instances where we don't do such a good job. And I think, we've taken a beating. And so I'm thrilled to hear that we've got folks that are interested in moving into management and leadership positions. And with you all have impressed me, for those that I just recently met, the skills that you're bringing to the table, and for the interns that I know well, I really have confidence that our government's in very, very good hands. And so as we close out, I do want to just acknowledge Yolanda Davis at the end of the row here. She is also one of our inaugural intern graduates who we picked up in the academy as an employee of our own because of her HR and training background. So rather than moving into 1102 operations, she joined us, and she was instrumental in assembling our panelists here this afternoon and for helping get us organized and together. So I wanted to acknowledge and thank Yolanda for all of her help in bringing this panel to you today. So with that, any remaining questions before we wrap it up? Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us.